Thank you.
Okay. It looks like we are ready to go. So, hello everyone. My name is Robert Wolf. Thank you all for joining this ecosystem networking session on ARM-based laptops hosted by Richard Henwood. This call is going to last for 30 minutes, though, of course, if there is any constructive conversation happening, some vibrant engagement between, of course, the audience and our industry professionals here, we can take the session slightly longer, but we do have a hard stop at the hour. For those of you who would like to leave at the half an hour, that's fine. The session is technically over at the half an hour, so feel free to leave and go on to other sessions as you wish. So after I'm done with this message, I'm going to pass the mic over to Richard Henwood. Of course, as I said, he's going to be leading this call along with several other industry experts who are here with us. I've already cleared it with our speakers here. If you would like to speak up, I just ask that, you know, in a polite way, maybe wait for a gap or try finding a way to speak up. If you have questions for our industry experts here, feel free to do that. If you don't want to speak up, if you don't want to unmute, you can also write a question in the chat. We have several people in the green room here monitoring those questions, and we will do our best to bring those to the speakers as quickly as possible. So without further ado, Richard, I'm going to pass it over to you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Robert. Good. Well, welcome all. This is the first BOF that I've run, and certainly the first time I've talked to folks around the Linux laptop in a virtual experience, virtual setting like this. My name is Richard Henwood, and I work in the infrastructure group at ARM, and I care about sources of friction for developers when they're moving to ARM. And one of those coincides with a huge personal passion and personal interest of mine, which is GNU Linux. I love Linux, and I've been running it everywhere for a while. When we look at the developer experience, a lot of developers these days choose a laptop, and when they choose a laptop, they'll often run Linux on it. And the experience that we're concerned around, and I'm concerned around, is when you're developing and the harmony and the synergy you get when you're developing on exactly the same platform that you're targeting. So we've seen the announcement in the last 6 months of Graviton 2. There are cloud-based instances and server options available from other server vendors. So how and what is the experience if you choose to get an ARM-based laptop and run Linux because you know you're going to target an ARM-based platform running Linux in the cloud? So we've got kind of three sections, or two sections really, that I've anticipated today. Actually, three sections, and then we'll have time for things that I forgot about or don't know about to bring up. The first one, we're going to kind of give an honorable mention to the Windows subsystem for Linux, which is available on the ARM-based platforms running Microsoft Windows for ARM. Mark's going to tell us a little bit about that and his experiences there. I've got a Pine Pro, which I'm pretty excited about. So I'm just going to briefly touch on what my very personal experiences are there and hear about, invite you to contribute if you've got something else. And then for me, the exciting part and the real kind of the heavyweight Linux solution, which is booting directly on the Qualcomm-based parts at the moment, the Qualcomm-based laptops, which are often sold as Windows for ARM laptops, but feature a UEFI stack, so they're close to a compliant platform. Bjorn Anderson, I'm excited to say, he's joined us, and he's going to talk us through his experiences there. So you've had the instructions, you vaguely know what's going on. We invite interruptions and contributions either in the chat or directly. Without further ado, Mark Menier, my colleague, can you tell us a little bit about how the Windows subsystem for Linux has been going for you?
Sounds good. Thanks, Richard. So my name is Mark. I'm based up in Waterloo, Canada. I'm actually calling from quite far away from the head office. Joined ARM about 6 months ago. I'm also in the software ecosystem team, same as Richard. And I manage cross-company projects. Some are commercial engagements, and others are in the open source. Project like Parsect is one of the initiatives that I lead. I'm a passionate product developer at heart. So my background is in development, and I've had the chance to do a lot of work on ARM over the years, on ARM IP. It's been quite a journey. And I'm happy to be here to tell you about my experience running my environment on a ARM laptop, which I've recently received. It's a Windows environment running on a Surface X Pro. And I got to say, so far, it's been a good experience. My normal device, my everyday device, is a MacBook. And when I looked at this laptop, the first thing I realized and noticed was the fact that it's light, and it doesn't have a fan, so it's really quiet. And I got to say, the battery life, it's amazing. Like it lasts so long. So from a everyday life experience, I'm migrating all my tools over to this laptop, which I plan to use as my primary device shortly. So far, it's been a seamless experience. Now, just before this talk, or maybe actually it might still be going on, there's a talk that was put together by Jason Andrews, and he's talking about Windows on ARM for software developers. And I want to reference this talk because him and I have reviewed, well, I've reviewed his slides. I know what he's going to talk about, and it's spot on with the discussion we're going to have here. And it's not just about the Windows environment, because when you consider development on the Windows box, you have to also mention or consider the Linux subsystem, WSL2. So WSL2 is a huge improvement over the original WSL1, where system calls are directed by a hypervisor and the file I/O transfer is much faster. So what that gives you is an environment where you have your Windows and your Linux simultaneously on the same box, managed by a hypervisor. Now, there's a setup to enable WSL2, and you can check out the recording from Jason's talk to get the details. But essentially, you update your Windows machine, make sure that you're running your latest Windows on ARM OS. And then there's just a few buttons to set in your Windows features window. So you're not typing anything, you're just clicking a couple buttons, you enable WSL2, and then you can go to the App Store and download your favorite Linux distro. And you install it at the click of a button. Once you have the environment set up, you can see an icon in your Windows environment that can launch a Linux terminal window. And that's all you need. From there, in the terminal, you're basically running in a Linux environment. So what I did after I got the Windows terminal installed is I installed my favorite tool, which is Docker development environment. And I just followed the standard Linux instructions to install Docker in this Linux environment. And what that gives you is a cloud native development environment where you can now develop end-to-end on ARM architecture. So you can develop on your laptop on ARM chipsets. You can deploy or run in the cloud on AWS Graviton instances, or more importantly for me is you can deploy directly onto your Raspberry Pi. And the idea is that it's not using a cross compiler. You're running natively in the ARM environment. So for embedded developers that are looking to leverage cloud native development practices and are looking for a development box, I would recommend this environment. It's been a joy to work with for me, and I can still run my entire Office suite without any changes to the environment.
Thank you, Mark. Just a quick question. How do you find the form factor? The Surface has a detachable keyboard. Is that a new?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I love the idea that I can use this tablet, laptop in many different environments. I'm one to work outside, to work in the car. I like the idea that it offers both options. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a great environment, and I'm actually, when I'm coding, I'm connected to my big monitor, so I don't actually use the laptop, interface here.
Okay, good. So let's move on. Now we're on to what I consider, not real, but certainly in a sense, these are well, this is the Pinebook Pro, which I've had for about a week now, and I've been playing around with it. It's the first ever platform I've got that starts with and has Linux as a natively supported OS. There are some great there is great support for a lot of x86 based laptops now in my experience, but this one is, I guess designed from the ground up to support Linux, and I've been very, very happily impressed with it. The cost is low. I guess I don't know about its availability, but if it's available in your country, I would expect it to be pretty affordable. And it's got a GPU, it's got Wi-Fi, all of this stuff just works. I have installed the Fedora distribution, which I'm a fan of, and I'm excited to see Peter Robinson on the Fedora mailing list saying that he's going to provide a release. And that kind of touches on one of the challenges for this platform, that it uses I'm not sure the accurate way to describe it, but it's going to start with a U-boot system, and that limits the availability. And I'm sure, Bjorn, you're going to tidy up some of my nomenclature and description here, but limits the availability of off-the-shelf Linux distributions. I do like the ability to go to fedora.org and download the vanilla AArch64 kernel and distribution, because I know if I'm running in my cloud or on my server, I'm downloading exactly the same distribution. So that's a challenge, or it can be something of a challenge for some folks. But in general, it's a lightweight platform, good battery life, and is designed with Linux first.
Richard?
Yeah.
Do you mind if we take a couple questions from the chat real quick?
That would be good. Let's do that.
Excellent. So this one comes from Albert. This is more of a comment, maybe with a question. My experience with ARM laptops is that you are usually stuck with whatever kernel you get when you get the device. You can't update your distro because newer kernels won't work with the binary blobs that are required, for example, Mali drivers. Do you have any comments on that? I'm going to
push that one out and say, Bjorn, that's going to be something that you address when we talk about the C630 platforms, the Qualcomm platforms. Is there another one, Robert?
Yes, there is another one here. This one's from David Tischler, one of our ARM innovators. Is there a list of Windows on ARM devices that support WSL2? At last check, the Yoga 630 C630 did not support it. Lenovo chose not to push the needed updates. I've not checked recently, to be fair.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if we have anyone from Lenovo or Microsoft on the call who can contribute to that or provide an answer there. David, I don't know that there is a list. I do know that the C630 does have the required hardware extensions to provide a virtual machine, and that's one of the requirements for WSL2 versus WSL1, which didn't need a virtual machine. So it has the hardware virtualization extensions, but those aren't available out of the box. Maybe Bjorn can add some light on that as well.
And there will be a section. As far as
that's as far as I know as well. The newer 8CX based Qualcomm laptops are supposedly have this enabled. So
I mean, supposedly Qualcomm was not considering doing the TZ shift to enable the virtualization extensions on 845.
Yeah, so that would mean that the C630 is not on that list, but the new Lenovo Flex Yoga 5G would be.
Marvelous. And I guess we know that that the firmware supports it for Microsoft when you boot Windows, because WSL2 works for the Windows platform. But Bjorn, can I now invite you to talk a little bit, and if you can consider the question around kernels and the kernel you get with you're stuck with, and touch on that, and if you can tell us where you are with your laptop story.
Yeah, so we started off quite a while ago now with a set of Snapdragon 835 laptops that people started to tinker with. There's been there's been progress. Some things are working, but unfortunately, the 835 laptop or the 835 platform didn't coincide with any with other projects that was running. Instead, the Yoga C630 comes on the Snapdragon 850 platform, which is very similar to Snapdragon 845, which has a number of development boards available and quite a broad interest from people working on upstream Qualcomm support. So where we are today is that with mainline and between 10 and 20 patches, engineering work, ongoing work, and firmware files that we still have to extract from Windows, we actually have something that is a working laptop. So that's what I've been using as my daily laptop now for since the beginning of this year, and it's becoming less and less just an engineering thing and something that would be available to more than the core developers. So in the feature list, then with that we have things like display, GPU, keyboard, touchpad, touchscreen works fine. Wi-Fi works. There's been some reports that Wi-Fi is unstable, so it seems like there's some difference between individual units. But in my case, it seems to be working pretty good, or on my laptop, I should say. USB works, camera works, audio works, and we have battery monitoring and charging works. On the audio front, we're still lacking microphone support, but otherwise it's pretty feature complete with that set of extra patches. And I haven't tried in a while, but I've sat through a 10-hour meeting on battery, doing emails and SSHing to my work machine at home to do some work in the meantime. So it's so without a lot of the advanced power save features that is still being worked on, this is better than my MacBook. So the interesting things happening, or the missing pieces, maybe I should say. So the big one is we have a need for supporting in the IMU driver. We need support to inherit the configuration for the display from the bootloader. So when UEFI sets up the display, it configures the IMU. And currently, when the ARM-SMU driver kicks in, it wipes that configuration, and the device restarts because of the faults happening from that. So that's the major thing missing for this to be accessible for more people straight off mainlines. So that's ongoing work, and then several of those 10 to 20 patches are either have landed recently or are in the state where they are approaching mainline. So my hope is that within 1 or 2 cycles. On the other hand, I did say that 1 or 2 cycles ago, but within 1 or 2 more version of the upstream kernel, we should be able to boot this with device tree and get and add firmware and get a working laptop. So with that, we would then solve the problem we have today, that the installer that is available for the C630, I think, is stuck on 5.2 based kernel, and it lacks most of the things that make a laptop something fun to play with. For example, Wi-Fi and GPU support. So essentially, the IMMU piece is the big item that we need to resolve.
Bjorn, can I ask a question. Well, how do these platforms, and this is, I think we're really talking about this platform today, the Lenovo C630. Why is we had a question that was, said, look, the problem with this with the ARM-based laptops experience is you get one kernel and you're stuck with it. What is different about these platforms?
So in the case with the C630, you get Windows. So what we're stuck with there is the community effort that led us to the 5.2 kernel. When it comes to other devices, in most cases, I think it's a matter of there being a heavy reliance on downstream vendor code, firmware binaries. But what we have here is an upstream focused package of software. So when these last patches actually land upstream, it should be possible to take Torvalds kernel, build that, and boot it. Meaning that in a short cycle after, the distros would actually distribute the same thing.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is that the difference here is that the work being done is really community focused and upstream focused. And
yes,
so you can look at the kernel logs at the moment and see, events that are actually the Qualcomm chipsets or support for this chipset arriving.
yes.
Meaning that it actually gets better over time. The more you've updated your kernel, if you're on Fedora Rawhide or the equivalent for Ubuntu, then you're actually going to get a better and better experience and a better supported platform.
Yes.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit about the IMMU issue and what the solution to that would look like and how we'd know if that's fixed?
Yeah, I have proposed a few different solutions so far, and the solution is somehow to when we probe the IMMU driver, we need to see what the bootloader configured, or somehow figure out what is the required configuration to maintain that the mapping for the display memory, and then make sure that stays, or that the configuration after initialization or reset maintains that. So a couple of weeks back, I did receive feedback from the maintainers on that, and I've been working on trying to come up with a solution that follows their suggestions or requests. So yeah.
And before I want to ask you, Robert, what's happening in the chat and conversation, but before we get there, have you got any guidance and advice for people who got one of these platforms, who would like to get one of these platforms? What should they do to kind of stay up to date and keep in touch and help?
I think the best resource is to join the ARC64 laptops IRC channel, and there is a community around this, and there is some good resources that people there can point you to on how to build what we have with these engineering patches, and how to load that onto the device and get the installer, get the Ubuntu version that is available to be installed with the older kernel upgraded to the latest kernel.
Great. And I think there's going to be a link to there on the GitHub AR64 laptops page, which we can hopefully provide as a note to this. Robert, what's happening in the chat?
So we do have a question from Anton. Here it goes. All existing ARM-based laptops suffer from low RAM installed. The max I saw are 4 gigabytes, which are not enough for heavy compilation and simulation tasks. What do you think of ARM-based Macs? That's from Anton, for anyone, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't know. I haven't been following the ARM-based Mac story, and part of this is my my absolute love and first passion around Linux. So that's my main interest. And I would say, as we look at the Lenovo, as we look at the platforms based on the 8CX Qualcomm chipset, and the Lenovo is the one that Bjorn's talking about. That's an 8 gigabyte platform, and so we are starting to see now these machines coming at what I consider an absolute bare minimum spec. I hear what you're saying, Anton. 4 gigabytes feels cramped, and you quickly hit the limit. Any other?
We do have another
Yeah, go
question
ahead.
here from Mark. He says, excuse the non-laptop question. Aside from the Honeycomb LX2K, are there any other ARM64 developer motherboards that are available?
Actually, Imran's here, who I work with on some of the vendor interactions around the laptop. Imran, we'll take a moment. Can you do a 30-second answer to that?
Sure.
Off topic.
Sure. So yes, you did mention the LX2 platform from Solid Run. We're also working with our silicon partner NXP on their developer platform, which is the RDB 2160. That will also be available to developers fairly soon. A lot of the work that we're doing with them is around our System Ready program, which is essentially targeting these platforms from our silicon partners to be standards compliant, meaning operating systems are able to just install, boot, and run. And NXP is a good example. We're also that's also going to have downstream effects on white box vendors and ODMs that are going to be users of the RDB that's going to be system ready certified. So partners like Nexcom and a few others are going to be coming out with platforms that are going to be available to developers in the near future.
I'd also like to add to that. That's a good one, Imran. I'd also like to add the Ampere Emag ARM workstation. If anyone's ever seen that one, I believe it's available through Avantech. While the price point isn't necessarily ideal, it is definitely a powerhouse of a workstation there as well. And I believe it's also server ready certified too. So another motherboard or device that's useful there. Real quick, just want to let everyone know we're at 3 minutes here until the half-hour marker. Again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we can, of course, anyone who would like to leave can leave. You're welcome to go on to your next session. If there continue to show questions in here, then of course we can continue on for a little longer, again with a hard stop at the 1 hour mark, but I'll leave that to Richard.
Let me ask, Bjorn, have you got a vision of the future, where things are going for you, and what the opportunities for Linux on laptops is? And maybe actually also, your kind of use cases I think are pretty special. So yeah, what are you doing today, and what's it really good for today? And then what's your vision for where things can go with this?
Yep. So I'm a Linux kernel developer and maintainer. So having an ARC64 or ARM64 laptop where I run Linux on has, for doing that, essentially, to doing my work, has shown a couple of interesting use cases which I never saw on my development boards that I ran on my desk. So it is a really nice dog fooding machine for the work I do. So I definitely would like to see more ARM64 Linux developers, operating system level, kernel level, to use these laptops as their daily devices and see face the code that we produce every day. And then, the main benefits of this laptop is the battery, and at the horizon, I hope to see LTE come up as well. For me, it's a nice front end for my my compile station that I actually build my kernel on.
So yeah, so you've kind of reached equivalence of your AR64, and maybe in some senses added some convenience because you're developing on the same platform that you're targeting. And then there's this extra growth room around, features like the LTE modem that's kind of hopefully become available for you.
Yep. Quality or feature wise, for most things it's there, and I find it more stable than running Linux on my MacBook. FreeDreno is more stable than Nouveau on my that I have to run with my NVIDIA-based x86 desktop. So overall, it's a good laptop. Unfortunately, I have some issues running Zoom in Chromium, and when I run Zoom in Firefox, I don't get a microphone or a camera to work. So that might be an integration issue on my part, but there is something going on with Zoom and Chromium on this laptop. If I turn to the Google Meet option instead, then things are working quite well.
Great. Robert, have we got any other questions, comments?
It looks like there were some comments on the Huawei Desktop. I don't know if Marcin wants to actually speak up. Love to hear from you.
We missed anything? Yeah, if anyone can contribute something we missed.
The Huawei Desktop thing, it was several months ago. There was a Twitter thread. Someone noticed Huawei Desktop announced in China using I think it was 4 or 8 core CPU, which was named the same version as the one in DO5 or DO6 server, but just with S at the end. So kind of very cut server chip for desktop. But it was shown, it appeared in Chinese news, few Chinese news places, and then disappeared from the world. Now, a few months later, one of some Linux SBCs, etc., services found a newer version of the same blog, of the same post. Again, a pile of posts on Twitter appeared, and it was about exactly the same stuff. And as David wrote on chat, it's Fetium, and you just can't get them.
And you have reminded me that it's worth noting that platforms based on the Qualcomm part include the Yoga from Lenovo, but there's also a Samsung Galaxy Note, which I haven't seen, a Microsoft platform, and the Surface Pro, and there is also a Huawei platform that I haven't seen. I do have colleagues in China who said they've played with it, but it's really, I think it's fair to say, Bjorn, the focus of your work is on the Lenovo because of the convenience and accessibility of that particular platform at the moment. But do you have good reason or a suspicion? It would be interesting, I think, if folks do have the alternative platforms for the Qualcomm to join the IRC, and there may be some opportunity there to get those working and to find out problems that would be
most of the work is in getting the platform supported. There has been some mentionings or some discussions on IRC regarding some of these other Qualcomm-based devices, but for now it's just out of convenience and out of what some core group of people happen to have. The Lenovo is the main target there. But we would love to see this broaden up and add the remainder of the devices as well.
Great.
Bjorn, would you
Robert,
like to share that IRC channel by chance in the chat? In case there's someone that's not already there.
I'll fish it out. Great.
Yeah. We can also try to include it in the description when this gets to YouTube as well.
There is a GitHub page as well, github.com/AR64-laptops/build. It would be your place to watch some really kind of steady systematic work going on there. There's people writing scripts. Cellywig wrote a script that from your Linux partition mounts your Windows partition and extracts the drivers you need for GPU and Wi-Fi. So that's pretty handy, stops you fishing around, and there's some other contributions, people, filing off the edges around the Wi-Fi behavior, the Wi-Fi performance. It seems that there was an issue in the kernel that may have affected the chipset, the Wi-Fi chipset. I haven't followed it, but it's a great place to sit and watch and say, look, this is my challenge, this is what's going on, or I did this and this seems to have improved stuff. And has the added advantage for me, I don't sit on IRC, so it allows me this kind of digest that I can keep up with. That's GitHub. Robert, any other comments or questions as we get?
That appears to be it. People also, it looks like people are kind of starting to drop off the call. So
Yeah.
If you have any final notes that you'd like to add, if anyone has any final things that they would like to bring up, otherwise I think we're looking at the time to close.
Well, I just want to thank you, Robert, for hosting, Mark for joining, Bjorn for joining as well, and preparing, and those are my final comments. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the chat, everyone.
Excellent. So we will close this session out. As Richard said, thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you to all of the ARM Dev Summit attendees who joined this ecosystem networking session. It was great to have you all here, so thank you.
Yeah, next time in person, I hope.
Yes.
We can compare stickers on our laptops.
Guys.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a nice day. Enjoy the next sessions.
Evening.
Chisel.